Hi, I'm Jeff Foxworthy, and welcome to Gamekeeper Podcast. If you want to learn more about farming for wildlife and habitat management, then, buddy, you are in the right place. Join the Gamekeeper crew direct from Mossy Oak Land Enhancement Studio as they discuss the latest wildlife and habitat management practices, news, and, of course, hunting. There's no telling what you'll learn, but I'm going to tell you, I bet it's interesting. Enjoy.
We're live in 3, 2, 1.
All right, everybody, welcome to West Point, Mississippi once again, and it's Thanksgiving week. We've got a lot to be thankful for, that's for sure. But here we are in home of Mossy Oak. We're in the Gamekeeper studio. Hercules sitting over here.
Oh, Hercules.
When we're missing one, Lanny is somewhere. I think he's on the line right now as we speak.
I'm not missing. I'm just in hot pursuit, man.
Yeah, well,
yeah, we're busy working down here. Gamekeeping. It's Gamekeeper week.
What are y'all doing?
We actually got the kids down here. We got a couple guys from the office, got all the boys in town, and we are looking for places to hang stands. We got all the kids in tow. And going through all the roads. We just found a white oak flat, and we're really excited about that. But we're fixing to hang some stands, so we're hanging ladders with lock-ons right beside them, so we can hunt in here as a family unit. So super excited about that.
Well, let me tell you this. If you had turned on the new Onyx feature that shows you where mass-producing trees are, you would have known right where that flat was.
You're exactly right. Well, let me tell you what. Onyx is our best friend out here right now.
We were looking at
his marked every trail, every tree. I can't get him even to drive straight because he's looking down at the screen the whole time. We talk about how dangerous texting and driving is. And looking at those screens, Onyx and driving a four-wheeler are rough too.
Dudley found that layer on the app today, and I think he's been down that rabbit hole pretty good ways.
Yeah, it's really cool. And I tell you what you guys are doing down there with the kids that's how to do it. You know, instead of them showing up and here climb into this shooting house. You're teaching them how to find the deer and
hey, Dudley, that's what it was all about for us. I'm glad you said that.
So you're teaching them about trees and how to find the hot spots and.
Hey, that's exactly what we're trying to do. Just because you're right, you get a lot of times you're just in a rush of life and you grab your child up and you go and they don't even know why you're sitting there in the first place. So we're lucky enough we got a little time around here around Thanksgiving and nothing like walking around with your crew in the woods and explaining stuff. Looking at a big giant white oak right now, thinking of you, Dudley.
That's awesome.
Got your name all over it.
Y'all flushed any ducks yet?
I can't. I'm not allowed to talk about feathers. I can tell you all about fur that you want to know, but I've been sworn to secrecy as part of the opportunity to come down here. We've seen a lot of deer.
Okay, good answer. I get it.
Well, look, so today's podcast, we're going to, in a way, this is all about ducks. We've got a guest that will be calling in a little while named Phil Kahnke, if I'm pronouncing that right. I think I am, but he's a great waterfowl photographer, and he works for Bandit. He helps with their content, but he is an avid waterfowler. And
I would venture to say that a photographer is probably more suited to help teach us about decoy placement or even deer hunting. I mean, because it's just so much more difficult. You got to get a lot of photos. And I mean, like Tess Jolly and some of these other photographers that are getting these amazing photos, they got to know what they're doing. So.
Yeah, they do. So let's keep this thing moving. What about blood on the biologic? What have you seen this week, Dudley?
Well, a buddy that has been buying trees from us for a while, his name's Brendan Compton, killed a really nice buck up in Kansas. And then one of my friend's sons, Leo Quick, got a really nice buck down around Port Gibson, Mississippi a couple days ago. So.
Yeah.
And he's wearing full bottomland.
Oh, good for him.
Congrats to Leo.
Yeah, and Tom Sega sent me a picture the other night, the guy that owns Duluth Pack, and he went old school. We did not talk about the 30-30 back a few episodes ago, and he broke out his 30-30. He killed a really nice Minnesota buck, and then I got to say that Jim told me that you see the deer.
Goodness.
It's 230-inch typical. Have you seen that?
It's I don't know how to describe it, but I mean the G2s, the G3. I mean everything is just amazing.
It'll be interesting to see where it ends up after it nets, because it may be one
Yeah,
of the
Bobby, is
top.
that some kind of world record?
I think it's going to be one of the top few up there. It's got to be if it nets what everybody seems to think it will.
I'd love to hear some of his habitat tips sometime.
He plants a lot of biological.
Well, I tell you
know
what,
that.
he's in the right zip code. He must find a lot of biological. That's right.
Stuff's dropping, and look, you can tag us blood on the biologic, and we'll be able to find it on social media to share it.
Yeah, we sure can. That's a lot of fun. So before we call Phil, I'm looking at Mac, and of course Mac is probably texting as we get ready to go here. But have you got a commercial for us, Mac?
I do. I mean, since we're talking about waterfowl, I mean, you got to talk about Browning shotguns. I've got my Maxxis 2 Wicked Wing Shattergrass ready to rock and roll in about 2 days.
Oh yeah. Well, look, I've got a few years ago when they brought that humpback back. I got one, and I absolutely love it.
The A5.
They are such good guns.
I still shoot my Browning B2000 humpback that my dad gave me.
Yeah.
And now my uncle gave me A5 from the 80s that had never been shot before. And I can't wait to play with that one.
Well, that sounds
Yes.
like a good gun.
And the cool thing about it is, I mean, when you think about duck hunting, you think about water, you think about cold temperatures, and that doesn't normally go well with a lot of guns. But I mean, having the reliability of the Browning, I mean, that day in and day out, you don't have to take a spare gun when you got a Browning.
No.
You know, I mean, it's going to work. It's going to eject the shells, and it works.
So, and another one that we should point out that they have that's just got this really popular, and I would encourage guys to try it, is the Satori. And you can get that dipped in bottomland. It is a great looking gun. There's a lot of folks around here have them, and that is a waterfowler's gun.
Yeah, I believe
Neil
shoots one, and Chris Paradise shoots one.
Yeah, I think there are a lot. And look, I'll go ahead and tell everybody, we got Mr. Bill Sugg sitting in here. He keeps wanting to there he is. Yeah, well, give him the horns. There he is. But there's no telling how many Browning shotguns he has.
Well, what they actually have, Dudley, in the over and under is a synergy.
The Synergy. Okay,
Yeah.
I stand corrected.
That's right.
They're dipped in bottomland or in blades, and they are good. I'm fortunate enough to have one, and after hunting with Chris a time or two and watching how easy it was to unload and never have a word about any kind of gun hanging up, etc., it's pretty easy.
And with these new shot shells, you really don't need a third shot.
Well, it just depends on how good a marksman you are. Yeah. I think there are times when, like the old boy said, why do you shoot 3-inch magnums? He said, because they don't make them any longer. Well, why do we not shoot more? Because you can't shoot more.
That's right.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it. So, yeah. Well, look, thank you for bringing up Brownie Mac. That we are so proud to be associated with them. And Mr. Bill, we are glad to have you sitting over here.
My pleasure.
So, Lanny, are you still there with us?
Hey, this is Lanny. I can't get to the phone right now.
Well, all right, Richie, would you effort to get Lanny back on the phone if you could, please? In the meantime, while we're waiting to do that, I think we could go ahead and call Phil.
Hello.
Hey, Phil.
How's it going, Bobby?
Oh, it's going well. We're having some technical difficulties, but for the most part, it's going pretty good. And I'm sitting here. I've got Dudley Phelps with me.
Hey, Phil.
We've got Bill Sugg, who is the president of Mossy Oak. I mean, he is a really important guy.
Yeah.
And
I know the name.
big duck hunter. And we've got Mac Thatcher, who's a big duck hunter, sitting in here. And somewhere we got Richie, who's trying to hold all the wires together because we lost Lanny through a technical difficulty. So
Importance is relative, Bobby. It's better to be among good friends.
Yeah. Well, Phil, how are you? Let me back up. Let me just say, look, Phil came to us highly recommended as a waterfowl guru. He's up there in the Dakotas, and he's a waterfowl photographer extraordinaire. So, Dudley, you know how close he's got to get to ducks to be able to take pictures. So he's got to hide, and he's got to be able to decoy ducks. And he also works for Bandit. Now, we're all big fans of the Bandit products.
Love all their stuff.
And Alan Hughes is just what a great guy. But all those products are just they're tremendous products, and they've got the decoys, the green headgear, and we've all used them. And so that's kind of what we're here to talk about. But let's hit the horns for Phil if we could.
All right.
Yeah, so Phil, we're excited to have you, and we just wanted to ask you some questions. We, like I said, you came to us highly recommended as being an expert on this subject.
Like Bill said, that might be subjective or relative, but I think in certain parts of it, I probably could say I am. I at least have a lot of time and do it. So,
well,
that's one of the keys into becoming an expert in anything, I would think. So
yeah, that's right. Put your 10,000 hours in, and so I'm told you're at duck camp right now. Is that true?
Well, I had to come home for a couple of days because my dog has been getting beat up. She got a tangle with a barbed wire fence a few weeks ago that I decided just need to let it completely heal, and she stepped on a fragmite yesterday and put a hole in her foot. And she's also got a rash on her belly. So I said, you know what, I'm just going to let her heal up. And I came home for a few days and take it easy over Thanksgiving and let her get better, and then get back at it after that.
That was probably a good choice.
Yeah, she needed it. She's 1 year old. It's her first season, and I don't want to put her through the ringer too much if I don't have to. So
let me back up just a little bit. I'm looking at Bill Sugg, and I have had the pleasure of duck hunting with him a bunch, and I have never been on a duck hunt with him that he didn't go out there and rearrange the decoys at least once. And I'm just being honest. That's his thing.
Yeah.
Rearranging the decoys, and a lot of the time it makes a big difference. I will give him that.
Well,
for sure.
I read something. I think it was in an article by the late great Wade Bourne where he said decoy spreads are a lot like a woman putting on her makeup. You have a base foundation, and then you start adding eyeshadow and eyelid liners, etc. And decoy spreads are sort of like that. That was his point. Is you sort of try to create a hole where they are and where you think the ducks are going to come. And if it works, great. If it doesn't, then, the old saying is, if it isn't broken, don't fix it. But if it isn't working, don't be stubborn.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Sure.
So, Phil, how do you determine how many decoys you need to put out? Are you a guy that likes a few, or you like a lot, or where do you fall?
I normally fall on the side of having as many as I can get to a spot reasonably. We do a lot of boat hunting here, and in various boats we can carry different amounts of decoys, or if we have to walk in, of course you're more limited. But I try to carry in as many as I can without being a burden. And that might be anywhere from 24 to 100 some, depending on what exact scenario we're in. But I've seen people talk about, and I've heard and seen people talk about trying to go real light on spreads, and I don't know that. I would always rather go for the visibility and having them be able to see you more, and having options to make a shape that you would want to get them to finish how you want, over having just a few for like something different. So I would tend to fall on the more the better to a point.
Yeah.
Some places some of our spots we may not actually put out everything based on the shape of the hole or the spot we're hunting or whatever it is, or the pond or the slough. Feel like you can almost overdo it sometimes, and you clog it up and you choke off ways for them to come into you.
And Phil, I don't know how it is in your world. I'm guessing you probably have a little more natural wind than we do. And
yeah, oh yeah.
Decoy spreads, size particularly, can be to me a lot like that old real estate saying of location, location, location. Well, in our world, regardless of the size, it's motion, motion, motion. And if the wind does it or it happens naturally, that's great. But if it doesn't, you have to add motion, whether that's a jerk spring, et cetera. But to me, that's in our world with a lot of calmness, unless you're lucky enough to hunt on that perfect day and windy day. That to us is probably the most important thing in our world.
I can see that. I mean, I've hunted, most of the way up and down the Mississippi and Central Flyways. And there's definitely a different wind situation up here on the plains versus in the woods or, something like that. Check even just in the Mississippi or the Missouri area where I go probably more than anywhere, a different wind situation. What we always try to do is, we're pretty open typically, maybe some cattail cover, but it's not overly high. So it's easy for the wind to rip across the water for us. But we'll always try to put my favorite setup in that in terms of like using the wind for that natural motion is to find a spot where you've got the wind mostly blocked off, but maybe you're quartered to it a little bit. You've kind of got a little spot where the wind rips across. Mm-hmm. And I like to put a big wad of decoys out in that, and then a few maybe right up in front of us where it's a little more calm, and let that side or that hook, whatever you call it, that be out in the waves and the ripples, kind of looking real lifelike. It seems like those birds always will key in on that, and we'll kind of angle our boat always to make it so that that's where we're planning on them coming in, even though you've got a pocket maybe off to the other side, but they're going to hit right out on that little bit of open water where all that motion is.
That makes a lot of sense.
Well, so there are days where some of the things that we're hunting are really, really small, and so we do use jerk cords depending on what the situation is like. And if it's real deep and it's going to be a disaster for the dogs, then we might not. But otherwise, we will do that as well.
So, Phil, how important is it that a guy make sure he have the very best decoys he can have, the most lifelike? So is there that much pressure on the waterfowl today that it can make a big difference if he's just using old cheap decoys and not paying attention to that?
It probably matters on the day. There's days where it probably doesn't matter, and there's probably places it doesn't matter. But there's definitely those days where I will say it would matter in those critical conditions where the weather isn't right or the sun isn't right. And they're able to see better and they're able to pick things out better. I've used everything from the cheapest decoys to the most expensive decoys, and without a doubt, at the very least, I would rather look at the more expensive, nicer looking decoys. And it just feels like you have more confidence when you've got a better looking decoy, one that moves across the water better. It's got the right color schemes. They stick out better on the water. I mean, you're only putting the odds in your favor by using a better looking decoy.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I would just think that why not have the very best that you can have?
Exactly. I mean, I've been on hunts where I think you could have put painted milk jugs out there and the ducks would still come in. Yep. But the majority of the season, we're standing around wondering, why aren't they doing this or why aren't they doing that? Well, that's most of the time. And that, why not have the most realistic thing you can put out there? I mean, that just makes too much sense.
And for the most part, it's not a huge dollar investment in it over the top of what a less expensive decoy was. It's just an incremental expense, so it's usually pretty minor in the big terms of a duck hunter's budget. I would always use the best that I could, whether it's whatever the brand was back in the day. But now I'm always using GHG.
It's funny you mentioned budgets. I was looking at a popular catalog recently, and this year, because shortages and supply chain issues that all of us are familiar with in different businesses, but we're all affected by it, and inflation, the cost of decoys have gone absolutely through the roof. And I do know, I'm old enough to remember people that used to get volume, used to paint old Coca-Cola bottles, et cetera, and build their spread around that just to have a lot. But I don't know that we're going back to that, but somebody told me the other day that 6 full-bodied goose decoys are somewhere between $250. So
and if it's not,
we're in an unusual time, and I'm sure it won't stay that way. But the flip side of that is we spend our money where our passion is. So if we really want to have the best, I think I don't think it'll slow down those folks that really want, to Bobby's point, why not?
Yeah.
I think we've proven that with multiple products in the outdoor world that have gone the ultra high end route. And decoys aren't really an exception. If you're gonna spend the money to do the things that you like, and if it went ungodly high, that would be one thing. But most of these products even though they're expensive, are still something people are willing to drop their hard-earned money for, and if it's gonna improve their experience in one way or another, they'll gladly do it. So.
Sure. So Phil, is there some like a spread technique or the way you place your decoy, something that you've learned through the taking all these waterfowl, this photography that you do, that something that you could tell our listeners that they could try and say maybe it might work for them?
Unfortunately, I don't think I have any real tricks like that. But I remember listening to an old, it was Barney Califf at an old game fair seminar. And someone asked him how to do why he wouldn't make a realistic looking duck spread. He said, well, if you want to be realistic, you take about 1,000 decoys and you scatter them all over this pond. And so that's going to be realistic. Then he said, but tell me where are your ducks going to land at? So you don't have a pocket for them or anything made for them to land in. So I've always thought kind of along those same lines. I don't necessarily go for the ultra realistic look. I don't try to make a specific shape. It's all varies on the way the wind direction is in the hole that we're in, with the way they're coming, the way our cover is. That's the fun to me of duck hunting is it's all just a big puzzle, and you've got the sun, the wind, the way the ducks are coming from, visibility, how well your hide is, the way you want to shoot so you're not looking into the sun, and where you want the ducks to land, and how you use your decoys really is kind of the final piece in that puzzle to positioning them where you need them ultimately. And it's one of those things that I like to sit back and look at every little spot as if it was kind of a puzzle. Sometimes we might use somewhat of a J hook that people talk about, or somewhat of the V or the U that people talk about. But we don't ever set out with a mind of like, okay, this is exactly what we're going to. We get in there, we look, we try to cover the space, use blocking ends to keep them from going past you, all that kind of stuff. So it's a combination of realism. At the same time, you need to make it work. Like Bill was talking earlier, if it's not working, if they're committing to you and they're not landing exactly where you need them, well, what can we do to position them? So I guess maybe the takeaway would be, don't be afraid to get out and move them and to try different things, because it can make a difference. I mean, moving 6 decoys can be a significant difference in terms of how those birds finish, without a doubt.
Phil, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you saying that. I think I'm going, since I have gotten a horn welcoming like you did, and they put a crown on mine, Mr. Decoy Mover, I'm going to take this excerpt the next time we go and get in the blind, and when the subject comes up, I'm going to hit the play button.
That's funny. Now,
it is
one caveat to that.
It is a trial and error at times.
It really is.
Because the wind can change while you're out there. The
the wind changes 45 degrees.
Sure.
You might have to completely redesign your spread.
Yep.
No
get them
doubt.
to do it quite right.
That's probably something we need to discuss. Phil, are you more of do you typically set up with the wind directly at your back, or do you like a crosswind where you're almost, sometimes you can take better passing shots with a crosswind? They may, so what's your theory on that?
So for me, it kind of depends on, we look at it, like say we know there's a spot. So we hunt some big reservoirs, big lakes that have some backwaters on them. And depending on what they're actually, we might not even be hunting a spot where the birds are actually using, we're just trafficking them. And we say we pull into a hole, say we're underneath the ducks here, here's where we got to be. And we get in there and we think, okay, so where's the first thing I'll do is which way is the wind coming from, so we know approximately which way we need to set up, because no one wants to shoot them coming over their back or quartering into them. That's just a recipe for a disaster. So we're always going to try to do at least a side or over your back. But one of the most important things we look at is what kind of cover do we have if we set up with the wind straight at our back. Because that's obviously the ideal scenario, where they come in, their breasts are facing and their feet are kicked down, they're right there. That's my favorite situation, if we have the cover that we can pull it off. Now, if you don't have that, I love to do a side or a quartering shot where the focus maybe isn't on us as much, the boat and the calling or whatever, whether we're hiding in a boat or standing. That takes a little bit of that pressure off of your hide, because they're not keying in straight on as they're coming. So it really depends. In a perfect world, yeah, I would have the wind 180 degrees straight over my back, going away every time. But heck, just these last 2 days, we had a nice, kind of a strong quartering wind over our shoulder. And man, those birds were finishing at 10 yards, and they had no clue. We stood up to shoot, and they didn't know we were there until we pulled the trigger the first time.
Oh, wow.
Love it.
So in the perfect world, yeah, I would love to, I'd like to have them square it up to me. But if you can do it right and it works out, that quartering situation, or even a side shot in a nice little small tight hole, is really good too.
So let me ask you a quick question. So in your experience of, is it necessary that, so if you've got a bunch of greenhead decoys out there, and if you're wanting to kill some pintails, do you need to have some pintail decoys mixed in there, or you just, can you just?
So I've done a 180 on this. In the past, I used to think it didn't matter, but the more and more I've been around other species, gosh, it sure seems to help a ton. On pintails, gadwalls, divers, definitely. We've added some pintails. I think we've added like 10 pintails here to our boat. And whether it was coincidence or whatnot, we've had way more pintails finishing, not just passing, but finishing over the decoys in these last few years since we started doing that than we ever did before combined. And a lot of the times they're finishing without us even seeing them and calling at them. So I have to think that matters for gadwalls. I would say it matters. Normally I'm not a big gadwall fan, but we get so many of them here in the middle of the season, maybe before we get our mallards, that it's just something, they're fun to go out and hunt. And we'll take out a dozen of those, and they sure seem to finish better when there's gadwall decoys. And in my springtime, in my photo deal, I take out a lot of diver decoys. That's really what sticks around the longest for us. And I've got cans, redheads, bluebills, golden eyes, a little bit of everything. And if you bunch them up, I'll have maybe 2 or 3 dozen out. And if you bunch them up by species, it never fails that those birds will land according to the species, right in with the ones that you have the decoys out of. So I haven't diver hunted as much the past probably 10 years as I used to. And back in the day when I did, I had pretty much just all bluebill decoys. But gosh, they sure seem to finish a lot better in the spring than they do if they don't have their own species right there.
That makes too much sense. We talk about diversity all the time with habitat, wildlife habitat, but just knowing that all that diversity is there, I would think that would make a duck feel more inclined to join in on the fun if there's several different types out there.
I'll tell you,
and especially their own type, I think. And I think with a mallard spread, I think you'll get the interest of most ducks. They'll see the block, and they'll see duck forms on the water, and they'll think, okay, we're gonna go check it out. And you're going to get teal, and you're going to get a lot of birds to fly by you. The thing I've noticed that's different is they actually come in and try to land a lot better when there's actually their own species there.
Mr. Bill.
Well, I will tell you this, Phil. You mentioned gadwalls. I don't know how it is in your world, but in ours, if you could find a way and bottle it up and sell it to get gadwalls to finish on a consistent basis, you could make a lot of money down in our world because they will circle and circle and circle.
Most craziest, most psychotic ducks where they'll bomb in from the heavens.
Exactly.
Like you couldn't stop them, and then flare the hardest you've ever seen them at 60 yards, and then circle for 5 minutes.
At least.
And then the next block comes and lands so fast you can't hardly shoot at them.
They are the king of the we should have shot them ducks.
Yeah.
When they're close.
I write about them a lot on my Instagram page, and I post a picture again because they're the most frustrating bird in the world.
Well, that when they keep circling like that, that's what makes Mr. Bill go out there and adjust the decoys. I'm pretty sure. So
you wear yourself out doing that with gadwall sometimes, I think.
Yeah, Mac, you're the most inquisitive person in the room. Have you got a question?
Do you think that the gender of ducks in a grouping matters? And if so, what would that grouping be?
In a decoy spread?
Yes.
This sounds like
we usually run 75, 25. I'm just kidding. No, I don't think so. No. We just kind of grab whatever we grab out of the boat and then throw it out. Personally, I like to throw drakes out just because they're drakes and they look better. And maybe the one thing I would say about that, I don't necessarily think it's the gender, but I think it's the appearance of the decoy. A drake mallard decoy has more weight on it and is going to pop more than a hen.
Yeah.
If you ever look at those drone photos of drakes and hen live mallards, even, or decoy spreads from up above a few hundred feet, it's a lot more difficult to see a brown duck than it is a white duck.
Yeah.
So
good point.
I guess maybe yes and no, it isn't the gender, but it's the appearance that correlates with the gender. So yeah.
It does sort of beckon that old question of decoys are always sold in even pairs. So is that because we think they're always paired up? Certainly they're not after they've been shot at a few times in our world. Yeah. But, Mac does bring up a good point. Do single drakes shy away from more drakes, or are they attracted to more hens? I mean, who knows? I don't know if anybody's ever done research on that or not.
So I would say in the springtime, that's taken to an extreme with, the drakes and the hens deal, the whole courting thing. And even then, I'll still run more drakes than hens. Yeah. And I feel like that's not a detriment. I don't think it hurts you at all to have that.
And that's kind of how it is in nature. I think there are more drakes that are born.
There sure has to be.
Yeah.
You see a lot more.
Yeah.
Well, it depends.
So Dudley, you look like you've got a question here.
Well, yeah, I'm kind of thinking back a long time ago when I was a kid growing up. We didn't have spinning wing decoys and all that stuff. And gosh, we sure did manage to kill a bunch of ducks back then. And then all of a sudden, I remember somebody in my duck camp got this thing called a robo duck, and it kind of swam around while its wings were spinning. And that thing worked great. It seems to me like nowadays, if you don't have all that stuff in your spread, that you're not going to kill anything. So do you think ducks have evolved to need all of that jazz to want to commit?
Well, I can tell you in the last, we have not used spinning wings in our spreads for probably 6 or 7 years now.
Oh, wow.
And I tell you, I think it's been to our benefit. There's been a few times over those years, not many, but a few, where we've been beat out by someone with a big gadget spread. But for the most part, if you can get into a spot they want to come in, have a good size and a good looking spread, and be hidden well and call aggressively. I feel like, especially at least on mallards, I feel like you actually have an advantage to not have them because they finish. It seems to us that they finish differently. They finish more. We always call it softer. They're not on edge because there's not all that stuff going on. And they come in, they just finish softer, and then we're able to capitalize on them more because when they're in there at 10 yards, we're able to take really good advantage rather than them skirting out at 30 or 40.
I like that 10-yard. The thought of the 10
yeah.
yards.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's nice.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I'm torn. I mean, I wouldn't say that in an ideal world, what you would do is you would use a spinning wing to get their attention when they're mile out and then stop it immediately. Or all the shakers and all that kind of stuff. And we just don't use those because typically, like we mentioned before, we tend to have enough wind or current or something going on that we don't need that. But those spinning wings, they definitely attract birds' attention from a mile out. Anyone who's seen a mallard land in the slough from half a mile away knows what they're recreating and why a bird would come to it. So I get it, and I think on some of there's certain ducks that maybe aren't as callable as mallards that maybe they're more advantageous to have.
That makes sense.
But for a mallard hunter, if the guy likes to blow a duck call, which I love, I think you're better off. I'm better off without them. I feel like we made the right choice on that.
Yeah, I think I'd like to spend a little time in the blind with it. I think he thinks the same way we do.
Yeah, and I've heard of folks just little minor things like squirting something on the decoys that helps them shine a little bit more. Anything like that can help. I think
I've heard that, and I've never tried it. I'd like to.
Like I know people that if the decoy string ends up going over the top of the duck's neck, they'll walk out there and fix it.
No, look, you're looking at the king of that right across the room.
And then everybody's got that guy too, where the decoy gets shot, and it's like Bill is sticking down in the water.
I actually think the best thing about going out and working with your decoys or changing them is the motion you create, because I don't know how many times, just what Dudley said happens. You go out and you stir the water up and the ripples are there and somebody says, get down. I think that's probably more important.
Maybe so.
Than redoing your decoys.
I would agree.
Back
Indirect.
to the motion.
Yeah.
And we do have a lot of calm days here. So motion is, as I mentioned earlier, is key factor for us.
Or you have a black dog swimming around in the decoy spread to go retrieve one, and they come and try to land on the dog, basically.
That's correct.
Yeah.
I used to hunt as a guest at a place outside of Belzoni, Mississippi, back in the 90s, and they would all mount. This probably isn't OSHA approved, but they would mount trolling motors to the front of their permanent blinds and set up a toggle switch. And when they would see ducks, they would turn that switch on, and those trolling motors would make a bunch of movement out in the spread, and then when the ducks got closer, they would turn them off.
Makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense. It's
Phil, I think we'd like to get you to come down here at some point and go duck hunting with us. I think you would enjoy watching Mr. Bill change that decoy spread 2 or 3 times in the course of a morning.
Let's do it.
I'm sort of thinking about a trip to South Dakota after listening to Mr. Phil, Bobby.
It
tables on that.
It does. Look, so hey,
like
Phil,
he might have a few more ducks than we do.
I think he does. So Phil, if
It's not
anybody
this year.
If anybody's listening to this, Phil, have you got an Instagram page? I know you want to tell bandage, but what have you got one for your photography?
Yeah, I do. That's usually the way I share most of my photos. It's just my name, Phil Kahnke Photos. If you're on Instagram, or I just have a website, just philkahnke.com. So those are the main avenues for getting my photos seen by the world.
And Kahnke is spelled Khanke, right?
Nope. Kahnke.
Okay.
Pretty much everybody pretty much everyone in the company spells my name wrong. So.
Well, look, we think a lot of Bandit. y'all make some great products. That mean they really are, and we thank a lot of Alan Hughes, and we appreciate how you guys support Mossy Oak. That is for sure. And
I'll add a big amen to that.
They just make some. If you're a waterfowler, you got to have some of their stuff. It's good.
Oh, when the nights start getting cool at work, there'll be boxes inside the office from the UPS man dropping off Bandit stuff every year.
Yeah, that's right. Phil, we appreciate you being here and taking time with us. And look, for your trouble, we're going to send you a GameKeeper Bertucci watch. So I'll be back in touch. I'll get your address. I'm going to put you on the comp list to get our GameKeeper magazine, and we'll send you a watch too. So we really appreciate you being here with us.
Hey, sounds great. That was fun. Love talking ducks.
Thanks, Phil.
Yeah.
Keep taking those awesome photos.
Get your South Dakota applications in, Bill.
Thank you, Phil. Pleasure meeting you.
Yep, you guys too. Talk soon.
All right, guys. Well, boy, duck season's just a couple of days away. Mac, I know you're frothing at the mouth, and it's that kind of gets me excited just starting to think about it a little bit. We don't have a lot of water around here right now.
It's a fun time of year. Duck hunt in the morning, deer hunt in the afternoon.
Yeah. Have you got any ducks? Well, you wouldn't tell me if you did, but I'll give you a chance to.
I'm sort of like Toxa. He'll tell you, which doesn't mean that you can go. But he'll tell you. No, I don't have any water or any ducks. I got one hole that's got water, but I hadn't checked it yet.
Yeah.
How's little Stuttgart looking, Bobby?
I don't know. I've been so busy doing other things, planting food plots, I hadn't had a chance. So look, why don't we transition? Let's do an Ask Dudley question. I assume you got one. And Mr. Bill, if you'll stay here, you'll enjoy this. Dudley gets a chance to kind of show his knowledge. So.
All right. Hey, Dudley, Nick from Alabama. So my question is, other than putting an electric fence around food plots, what are some ways I can improve my habitat for deer and turkey in conjunction with my livestock herd?
Could that be Saban?
It's Nick Clark from Auburn, Alabama.
All right, good.
Nick Clark.
Auburn.
All right. Well, Nick, that's a really good question. And that's a really good question. And two things come to mind. You know I love planting trees. I also like improving the overall habitat. So we'll talk about trees for now. You've already mentioned electric fence. A lot of cattle guys have electric fence available. So you could always fence off 2 or 3 acres and fill it up with trees and keep the cows out of it for 5 or 6 years while they get established. You can also, and this is a little bit of extra work, but cattle do need shade trees. So, and you're also wanting to feed the wildlife, but it's a little extra time and money. But if you can get like some welded wire fencing and maybe about 3 T-posts, you can plant your tree, use your tree tube, do everything you normally would. But when you're done, fence it off. And I mean fence it off pretty wide because their hooves can compact the soil. I would say about a 6 or 7 foot diameter cage around each tree. And, that's a lot of work, but if you want to have cows and trees, you got to put in the work. If you were to just leave that tree tube there without a cage, they're probably going to try to chew on it or scratch their back on it and end up tearing your trees up. So doing that big cage around every tree is very important, and you have to secure it with some T-posts. Otherwise, they'll knock it over. And then another thing, with cattle, there's some people in our area around West Point that do both. There's a new technique out there called rotational grazing, where you're always moving electric fences around everywhere. And instead of having these huge areas or paddocks or pastures where the cows just stay out there all the time and eat the grass down to the ground and then they have to be fed, you're moving them from small area to small area. And you're actually mimicking what bison used to do a long time ago on the landscape. So you put the cows in one spot for a few days, they trample all the plants, they eat, they go to the bathroom. And then so you're leaving fertilizer, you're disturbing the soil, and then you're quickly moving them to another area. Sometimes you make it bigger, sometimes you make it larger, and you keep them on the move, and it actually greatly improves the soil health and fertility by using that method, rotational grazing, and you end up with a lot of good beneficial plants. Clovers persist really well with that technique. Other wild, broadleaf forbs that deer munch on. Lots of, insects and stuff for the turkeys too. And so we're seeing that more and more people are able to manage for both and do a darn good job at it. So check into that rotational grazing, and then that little trick about putting the fencing around the trees to get them going works.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Way to go, Dudley.
That's a fun subject.
Yeah. Well, so this is the time, Mr. Bill, you got your hand raised over there.
I do. If I could ask Dudley a question. We had a associate of our business and friend that sent us a willow tree honoring Tim Anderson, who many of you know passed away several months ago. But he sent it to us in honor, and I've kept it alive, kept it watered. But Tox and I were talking the other day about a good place to plant it. We maybe behind our office or at one of the lakes. My question is, does it require a constant source of moisture or water? You see, we equate willow trees on lake banks, pond banks.
Absolutely. So do you think, I assume it's a weeping willow?
It is a weeping willow.
More of like a landscape type of tree.
And I honestly can say I didn't know that was an expression of empathy or sympathy in times of loss, but that's why it was sent.
Yeah.
And very nice gesture on the people that sent it, and I want to honor that by putting it somewhere where
putting it in the right place,
it's got a good chance
where
of
it'll last
a
long time, so we can see it and think about our buddy Tim.
There you go.
A lot of folks plant them on the edge of a pond. It provides great shade, and we just kind of associate a weeping willow with near the pond. They can actually survive on a dry upland site. They have a very vigorous root system that'll spread out. It may not grow quite as fast, but yeah, they can handle growing just about anywhere. But ideally, I would probably put it near a pond where it can tap into some moisture, and it'll have the best chance at surviving and thriving. So,
thank you.
Good question.
With the way that the new building down there floods, I would think the back of that building might be a pretty good little spot there.
Yeah, it can find some good moisture down there, or the little pond back behind the old biologic warehouse, somewhere
there
around.
You go.
Well, look, Mr. Bill, we're glad you joined us today. And this is the time of the podcast, we're kind of wrapping up, where I kind of look at everybody and I say, what did we learn? And I'll go first. I think what I learned the most is Mr. Bill's probably doing a good thing when he goes out there and adjusts those decoys. His heart's in the right spot, and he's trying to help the hunt out. And so I'm going to quit being kind of as critical of that as I might have been in the past.
Well, that's a good point. You can either sit there and twiddle your thumbs when the ducks aren't flying around, or you can get out there and walk around, warm up some, kick the mud up, make it look more natural, and that next flight that comes through may just fly through close enough.
Bobby, I appreciate your sentiment, but I do know that either Toxie or Lanny will pick up that banner and carry it.
Yeah, it won't be dropped. That's for sure. So Mac, what about you, man? Hopefully you learned something.
I did. I think that the diversification of your decoy spread makes sense, and it's something that you don't really see a lot of. I mean, you see, at least here in Mississippi, a bunch of mallards, drakes and hens, and then some gadwalls and maybe a couple wood ducks. But really, I can't remember the last time I saw a pintail in the spread, and sometimes on bluebird days you see them flying. So, I think that'd be a good addition to the
well, we all
spread.
want to kill them when we see them. We get excited, and if we don't have any deeks out there, you might be hurting yourself. But that's a good thing to learn. I noticed that too, and I also think that, like he was saying, some of these higher end decoys might as well have the very best. Something that you going to all this trouble to be out there. I think you need the best decoys you can get. You know,
Yeah,
so-
that makes sense. As expensive as the shot shells are, and fuel and time, why not make your equipment more use more reliable equipment that's more realistic.
Sure. So, Mr. Bill, look, it's hard to think that you might have learned something, but was there anything you came away from
I
this?
wake up a new world every day, Bobby. I did learn something. I learned that Phil is a very knowledgeable and very passionate waterfowler, and it's always good to learn how other people do things. We learn, hopefully, and we get learning, we're down under the ground, hopefully. And I also learned what I already know, that when it comes to trees, Mr. Dudley is the king, and I always enjoy listening to him and his knowledge of that. I'm amazed.
Well, thank you.
And I appreciate y'all including me today. It's been very enjoyable.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you for being here. There's a lot of people that we need to invite in here because this company is full of people that have are very passionate about the outdoors. That's kind of like a prerequisite almost. And there's nobody more passionate about duck hunting than.
There's I have a lot of company out there.
You do have a lot of company, but
And so many people, I know you've probably covered it, but so many people don't realize how passionate Toxie and Neil and Daniel and the family is about waterfowl.
You're right. Everybody just assumes turkey's number one.
Turkey's number one. That's right. But we all know how hard he works at it and how much preparation.
Mm-hmm.
And he takes pride. Yes, he likes to go and have a great hunt with friends, and he's very generous. But he likes doing everything it takes for the ducks. And true conservationist when it comes to waterfowl. Really is.
Yeah.
I've watched it for years and years and years. We all have.
I would venture to say that he puts more time into ducks than any of his other habitat fun. He's always out there checking those.
That and food plots.
Yeah.
You're probably right. Mm-hmm. You're right. Well, look, this has been a lot of fun. Are we good on everything, Mike? Richie, you look. Wake up, Richie. You over there, please. Lord have mercy. Do you know Richie actually fell asleep during a podcast about 3 weeks ago? We had to wake him up. So, anyway, we'll look here. We appreciate it. I'm trying to look at my board. You know, guys, the TV show's on Tuesday nights, 8:00. On the Outdoor Channel. Please watch that. And please, Cuz was on Rick and Bubba's podcast this past week. So, guys, if y'all get a chance, go listen to that. It's really good.
That was a good one.
It was. So, look, we appreciate everybody listening to us. And why don't you say goodbye, Dudley?
Goodbye, Dudley.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of the Gamekeeper Podcast. And be sure to tune in again. Subscribe to Gamekeeper Farming for Wildlife magazine, and don't miss the Mossy Oak Properties Fistful of Dirt podcast with my good buddy, Ronnie Cuz Strickland.